Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mr. Hicks Podcast. We're here getting it in once again, time and time again. We are on time, we are on schedule, as we are now going to be recording every Tuesday and Friday night. So please hit that like, hit that subscribe, make sure you give us that notification so you know every time that we're doing what we do and talking a little football, whatever sport we may be talking about, whatever's on the top of the dome. So here we go. So if you don't know, a lot of buzz about Myles Garrett demanding a trade or requesting a trade from the Browns. And I know some people don't like this. They don't like when players they ask for a trade. It's like, hey, you signed a contract, live out your contract or play out your contract the way that you said that you were going to. When you signed it, you got the money, now play. I totally understand that. However, there is a time when talented people want to work with other talented people. So if you were a lawyer, let's say that you were a brilliant student in high school, and you are brilliant in college, and you are brilliant in law school. And then through the way that the legal system works, they say, you have to go work for the worst law firm in the country. You will get paid a lot of money, but you're going to have terrible coworkers, you're going to have terrible bosses, your bosses, you're going to have a terrible owner of your firm, and they're going to have all the leverage in the world to keep you exactly where you are. Because we want all the law firms to be kind of even and nobody have that much of a better law firm than anybody else. You wouldn't do that. Like there's no other career that I feel like that's really done where they tell you that the most talented person, up and coming young person, has to go with the worst possible team. And that's what happens when you get drafted, when a great player like Myles Garrett gets drafted by the Browns. So a lot of players are going to unstable situations where you don't have great teammates and you might not have great coaching and you might not get developed very well. And that gets frustrating over time. Teams like the Browns, the Colts, the Lions for a long time, these are really just bad franchises. They only seem to get great players when, number one, they overpay in free agency, or number two, when they have a very high draft pick and that person is an absolute no-brainer. Like, you only end up with an Andrew Luck because Andrew Luck is a generational talent, and any idiot would take Andrew Luck, especially when you have Peyton Manning on a decline. So the Lions had, the Browns had a left tackle at one point named Joe Staley. Joe Staley was an amazing player and multiple-time All-Pro. Probably never played a meaningful down of football his entire career. You have guys like Calvin Johnson, same thing. Calvin Johnson was amazing. People that talk about Megatron talk about like he was the absolute greatest player ever. One of the greatest wide receivers to ever play the game. Incredibly physically gifted and a really nice guy and a really smart guy. And eventually he just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I am tired of getting prepared mentally, physically, to get beat up. I mean, he played wide receiver, so how beat up was he really getting? And he was also freaking humongous, so it was pretty much everybody else getting beat up. And he wouldn't do it anymore. And he just walked away from the game. And I'm like, that's how terrible it must feel to play for a bad team over a long stretch of time. It's like, yes, I'm making a lot of money and I've made a lot of money, but if you do good with your money, maybe you get to the spot where you can just be like, hey man, I don't want to do this anymore. I've lost the love for the game. I've lost the will to prepare in the off season and the preseason and get beat up and everything. I've lost the will to kind of do that if I have to keep playing for this franchise. And especially if you see other players doing well and they're like, man, I got this money, but I'm never going to play for a Super Bowl. I'm never going to play in the playoffs. I'm never going to play a meaningful snap of football playing for the Browns. So in this particular case, when there's players like this, some of my favorite players, like Larry Fitzgerald was one of them. He was a stand-up guy. He signed a long-term contract with the Arizona Cardinals. I think he made one Super Bowl, and then it was pretty much miserable after that. They never really got the whole quarterback situation right. So, and of course, people were talking about the Eagles, and they're like, are the Eagles going to make a move? Of course the Eagles are going to try, because that's what we do. And after watching what happened this year with Saquon, and like, do we really need Saquon? Probably not. But we had a great offensive line, and we had the quarterback set, and we had the wide receivers set. And running back might be one of those positions now where it's like when McCaffrey went to the 49ers, it was like it just set everything else on fire. It gave you that weapon. Yes, you need a lot of things to be right for a running game to really be effective. You need great offensive line play. and you need a quarterback that can put you in a situation to be successful. But the Eagles had that. So while it might not have made sense for a lot of teams, it made great sense for the Eagles. So now, in the same token, do the Eagles need Myles Garrett? No. Of course we don't. We just won the Super Bowl, and largely because our defensive line was just ridiculously dominant, and we have a premier defensive tackle in Jalen Carter, who's an absolute menace. He's a knuckle-dragging savage, and I'm glad he's on my team and not on yours, because if he was on yours, I'd have to worry about him. So, but I think we've shown that the Eagles just gather greatness. That's what they do. That's what they do now. And I believe that Howie said this about like when he had the chance to take take Jefferson, and they ended up taking Rieger. And you think, you know what? I'm not going to outthink the room from now on. I'm going to get great players from great programs who have already established that they're really good. I'm going to put them together, and then I'm going to get talented coaches to figure out how to develop them and put them in position to be successful. That's it. And his ability to do that has put the Eagles in a situation where they are. He also has a very good job of in the salary cap. So he's like, he knows how to put it so where like I want to put the bulk of money in years where I think the salary cap is going to go up. He also tends to do this thing where he brings in multiple players at the same position. I didn't realize he was doing this until very recently when I saw somebody else talking about it. That he brings in 2 receivers. He drafts Devontae Smith, and he brings in A.J. Brown. If one of them doesn't work, you still got another one that's doing pretty well. You got a Jordan. You bring in Jordan Davis one year. You bring in Jalen Carter the next year. If one of them doesn't work, you still got probably a better odds of having at least one good, really good defensive tackle. So corners, the same thing. You brought in corners in bunches, 2 in the same draft. They both end up hitting, great. But if only one of them hit, you still end up with one pretty good corner. So, amazing job by Howie, as it always is, and Howie we trust. So, a couple of things I wanted to talk about, like why the Eagles should go ahead and try to do this, and try to pick up, like, first, just add greatness. Number one, we're in the Super Bowl window right now. Those windows can close at any time. I was really concerned when we were losing Fletcher Cox, and then Jason Kelce retired, and then both of those players, the guys that replaced them, ended up going to the Pro Bowl this year. So really good job for that. But I thought the window was kind of be closed. I thought like maybe last year, the year before was as good as it was going to get because you had a great mixture of veteran players and young players. And it turned out that the young players were really ready to step in and become those primary agitators and those primary forces on successful teams. Usually that takes a little time. But in this time, it was really grown over a couple of years and ended up working out beautifully. However, everybody's under contract right now. So if we get a chance to add somebody that can keep this going, we might get 2 or 3 Super Bowls out of this. I expect at least 2 more appearances and 1 more Super Bowl out of this group because, like I said, most of them are locked down. Now, all of our picks are going to be low. We may not be in the Super Bowl every year, but we're going to be darn close. So if we're talking about giving up 2 or even 3 first-round picks to bring in Myles Garrett, what are we talking about? We're talking about losing a pick that's somewhere between 27 and 32. So what? Give the picks. There's not going to be a Myles Garrett at pick 32. And it's not going to be anybody. You're probably not going to get the value of Myles Garrett with 2 first-round picks for 2026 and 2027 or 2025 this year. So if they want this one and the next one and one after that, give it to them. Right now, our defensive line is already really good. It was already able to win a Super Bowl damn near by themselves. When you have a dominant front 4, it makes everybody else's job easier on the back 7. So what happens if you add Myles Garrett to that? You already have Jalen Carter that demands a double team. Then you add Myles Garrett. That means that you're going to have to keep 6 blockers in at all times. You're going to have to keep a tight end or a back in at all times. No one's going to try to block 5 on 4 when 2 of those people are Myles Garrett and Jalen Carter. So that means there's going to be 1 less person that's going to be in the pass pattern every single play. I don't care how badly you want to complete long passes, you're not going to be able to because you don't have time. And what does that mean for the linebackers? That means the linebackers are going to be able to just flow freely. Why? Because there is no way that you're going to be able to get an offensive lineman, a center or a guard, up to the second level to block that middle linebacker. There's no way. You know why? Because you got to double team Jalen Carter and you got to get a piece of Myles Garrett at all times. Who are we going to have to give up? It's tough, but some of these young guys are going to have to go in order to make this happen. You're going to have to give a bunch of picks, and you're going to have to give up players. Would I give up Jordan Davis? I wouldn't want to, but I would. I would give up Jordan Davis. If you have Jalen Carter and you have Myles Garrett, you don't really need Jordan Davis, no matter how good he is. And kind of breaking up that connection, that Georgia connection, I totally get it. I totally don't want to. However, Myles Garrett in his prime on like a 3 or 4 year deal is absolutely worth it. So also, you guys got guys like Keely Ringo and Eli Ricks, the guys in the secondary. You don't need them as much now because you have Quinton Mitchell and because you have Cooper DeJean. Those guys ended up working out so well, so quickly that you don't need the corners you drafted a couple years ago. And it's kind of like in Howie We Trust. In Howie We Trust, absolutely. He's managed his salary cap so well, and honestly, the Eagles roster is full of players that we shouldn't have gotten or should not have developed into what they developed into. Braun, nobody thought Braun was going to do what he did. Was an outside guy, moved him inside. What does he do? He turns into an all-pro. Mekhi Becton, he was a failed left tackle from the Jets. Comes here, moving the right guard. He's amazing. This is what we do. This is what he does. He finds guys. We have a left tackle that is from Australia who is 6'8" and over 300 pounds and never played a down of American football before he got on a plane to join the Eagles. He made a Pro Bowl. I mean, you literally can't make this stuff up as far as like get talented people and get very good people who are developers of talent in the building and just let them do what they do best. So, do I absolutely trust Howie to make it happen? Do I absolutely trust Howie to not give up too much? I didn't expect Howie to be able to bring in A.J. Brown. I didn't expect Howie to be able to bring in Saquon Barkley, but he did it. So if there's ever a guy that's going to make this happen and is going to make sure that we don't get fleeced the wrong way and is going to make sure that we're going to look absolutely brilliant again, and the entire NFL is going to like run around like their hair is on fire trying to figure out how to block Myles Garrett and Jalen Carter on the same defense, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Howie. And Howie we trust, y'all. That's my time. Take it easy.